The Play Action podcast is fueled by Picasso's Pizza, where every night is pizza night.
Josh Allen channeled his inner gunslinger to a negative extreme in the Bills season opener. We break down the Bills quarterback.
It was a one-game sample size, but we saw some of the same problems as last year, but also some big differences. We'll go through each of those.
And the Las Vegas Raiders come to town for the Bills home opener. We'll tell you about the Bills' chances to rebound. The Play Action podcast starts now.
The Bills lost their season opener to the Jets 22-16 in overtime in a game that should have been winnable, but 4 turnovers by Josh Allen really changed what happened that game. Mark, what did you make just kind of what we saw out of Josh in the season opener?
Yeah, was a very obviously disappointing, frustrating loss. There's no shame in losing on the road to a great Jets defense, but losing to a team where Aaron Rodgers goes out after 4 plays and Zach Wilson goes in. I mean, as many people have said, the only way they lose that game is if Josh hands it on a platter to the Jets, and that's what happened. Actually, there were, I was encouraged by some of the Bills' quick game passing, but it's just Josh. You only live once. Josh appeared, and he went off the air, and made some really bad, impatient plays, and Josh's impatience is an issue, and it's a concern.
Yeah,
Catherine,
I think
you wrote a good column about Josh, that night. What was your perspective?
For me, I think especially when we heard so much from him all off season about how this was a focus point, this was something he was working on, and then seeing it show up kind of the same stuff he's been working on in the first game was an issue. He was really despondent after the game. My sample size is slightly smaller than yours, but over the course of covering him, he seemed close to as somber or as kind of shocked as he's been after maybe a playoff loss or something like that, where, just kind of a little dazed, putting it all on himself, saying this was his fault over and over. And 3 interceptions, a fumble, the first 2 interceptions into double coverage, the third one, again, just, he's trying to make things happen when they're not there. It's not what you want to see this early in the season.
Yeah, sometimes when you want the quarterback to be the leader and, take responsibility, be the first one to take responsibility. And sometimes when the team loses, NFL quarterbacks, yep, it's my fault. I got to do better. But, everybody kind of knows it was a team loss. But this one really was. Josh blew it. The first 2 throwing deep, I thought the third one was as bad as the first 2 because it's 3rd and 2, and actually it was a good play, and he had Diggs and Kincaid both open underneath, and he threw it to the sideline deeper, intermediate route, when he had the easy first down there. It was that, the play design worked. So, and then, there was just, Josh, especially against good defenses, they need to take advantage of Josh's legs. Yes, that's part of the advantage. It's the extra man advantage against an elite defense. But the leaping vault over CJ Mosley, who's like 240 pounds and who could, break him in half. That's a risky. They can't have that. It's one thing to be on a dead sprint and vault over a Chiefs cornerback, but trying to vault when you're 8 yards from the first down over CJ Mosley, who could body slam him and give him a concussion, that was just a little panicky. It was a little desperate.
Yeah, and early on in the game too, at least, you don't need to be desperate at that point, but also to your point, you need to play safe. So I think just kind of a lot of the same things. The hits too, something he talked about this offseason saying, I know I'm getting older. I know I can't take some of the hits that I used to. Um, it's something everyone else on the team, coaches, players have talked about as well of we've got to keep him safe, but a lot of this comes to Josh himself and just those decisions he's making.
Right. And there's plenty of reason, now again, it's week one. You can't we've overreacted to week ones in the past. 2 years ago they lost to Pittsburgh and looked horrendous. And turned it around. Last year they looked like world champions against the Rams. And we've seen Josh do better. Okay. We have seen him be patient, more patient, and not just like in the past. I mean, at New England, second half of last year, he was a patient guy who played good. At Kansas City last year, he skewered them underneath. Obviously, as the season went on, the Bills' receiving options dried up outside of Diggs. But we have seen Josh do better than this plenty of times. So it's on the coaches to etch a sketch his brain and get him back on the path. So we are all in agreement that the season opening loss was largely on the shoulders of quarterback Josh Allen, but it wasn't all his fault. Catherine, what are a few other takeaways you had from the Jets game?
Yeah, we can bounce around on some of them, but I think kind of similar to what we talked about with Josh Allen, some of the problems were things we've seen in the past. And it was like, okay, you had an offseason to address some of this, but it's popping up again. I think there were still some issues with the offensive line, even just some penalty wise for Spencer Brown, that put them in trouble. That then kind of, things snowballed from there in some cases. The run defense as well got gashed a couple times. We can start with that, Mark. I, partway through the game was like, oh, are we going to talk about run defense again this season? Do you think we need to this early, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think that, there were some issues. I think against power running formations, there is a concern. Are the Bills stout enough? I thought Terrell Bernard was mostly solid in his first start. Looking overall at the defense, really, they contained the Jets pretty well. But again, they're playing Zach Wilson. You held him to 140 yards. You should hold him to 140 yards. Breece Hall is great. Breece Hall is a problem. I think that mostly the run defense was okay, but like defense, other teams are going to look at this and say, okay, when we power up in 3 tight end and 2 tight end formations, the Raiders play with a fullback. Miami plays with a fullback. Week 4, a lot, or they're capable of doing that, even though you think of them as this outer space offense. How do the Bills handle that? Their answer against the Jets was to play the quote unquote big nickel with Taylor Rapp. Bills. I think that's a bit of a concern. New England is going to power up on them when so the Jets went to 3 tight ends and the Bills answered with Taylor Rapp. And I worry that they're a little soft against power formations. They don't like to play the base 4-3 defense.
Yeah, we obviously are hitting some on things that are similar to last year, but some differences too. I thought it was interesting. Just Taylor Rapp as a person, this was the first time we got to see how they were going to use him in this defense, even if schematically that's something they've done in the past. But, he's someone they've really liked all off season, getting an early look at him. And then on the flip side on offense, they started this game in 12 personnel, Mark, that's something we talked about, how they were going to use more of it all off season. What did you make of just kind of how that showed up over the course of this game?
I liked it. I was surprised. We knew they were going to use it a lot. I was surprised how much they used it. They used it 66% of their plays. It was 4.1%, according to our charting last year. But, the quick game passing against a brutally tough defense was somewhat effective. Josh was 17 of 23 passing out of 12 personnel, two tight ends, one back, two wide receivers. That's good against the Jets defense. Now, it's just there were, again, 6 or 7 plays where he got way too greedy. But I thought it was somewhat encouraging, even though the tight ends produced 7 catches, which is better than last year. Could have been more. Like I said, the last third interception, Kincaid's wide open there. And it's not just like a second Monday morning quarterbacking, looking at the video and he should have seen that. I mean, he was there. So I think we're gonna see more of that. It's gonna be interesting to see, are they gonna do it that much? 66%. I added up, the number 1 team in the league in 12 personnel was 30% last year. So interesting, but I want to see more of it. More targets for Kincaid. More.
Yeah, I think especially when we had talked too about how, there were times this offseason where Sean McDermott downplayed how much Kincaid's role was going to be. And we talked recently about how much of that was a smokescreen, how much of that is protecting your rookie tight end of not having too big expectations placed on their shoulder. But yeah, early on, just kind of, maybe fans would want some more splashy plays like you, Mark. They want a bit more, but just percentage wise, how often they're using 12 personnel, a huge difference from last year.
Yeah. Another big difference. And again, it's Zach Wilson. So the bar is low there on defending that quarterback. But, I thought the defensive line played well. Leonard Floyd was good. Jordan Phillips made a play. Greg Rousseau was outstanding. So if that's the Bills, the Jets don't have the best offensive line. They're not a top 10 offensive line. But if that's the Bills' front four for most of this season, that can win. That can be a winning front four.
Now, coming off the Monday night game, the Bills have a slightly shorter week to get ready for the Raiders. Mark, it's their home opener for the Bills. What do you make of this matchup?
Well, certainly the Bills are better than the Raiders, and they need to win this game. The Raiders are kind of a weird franchise. They made the playoffs in 2021 with Derek Carr, and then in 2022 said, we're going all in. We got to, we made the playoffs. Let's make one more push. Paid Devontae Adams, the star wide receiver, a huge amount of money. And then it didn't work. And now they're in this, they for cap reasons, they said, well, Derek Carr isn't getting us over the hump. They signed Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's like they're in this middling area like the Bills were in for so long in the drought. Like, we're not bad, we're not good. Are we going for it? Are we not going for it? It's an odd franchise, right? They're in an odd place.
So they're weird, they're odd. Those can go a few different ways, good or bad. What do you think are the strengths of this team then?
They, number one, they are pretty good at the skill position outside of the court. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is a fine, functional quarterback, but they're good at the skill positions. Devontae Adams, elite, top 5 NFL wide receiver. Josh Jacobs, a great running back. The other thing they have and this is a thing to watch for, their left defensive end, Max Crosby, one of the top 4 or 5 left defensive ends in the NFL. So this is a tough start, and we knew this, and we wrote about this. The first 4 weeks are going to be a gauntlet for Spencer Brown. He had a tough matchup in week 1. The Jets are great. I thought he did better against the speed rushers than the bull rushers. Now he's got Max Crosby, who's great. And then next week, Washington has a great front 4, and then Miami in week 4. So those are the strengths of the Raiders team.
Yeah, I think especially again when we already mentioned the offensive line and protecting Josh Allen, Max Crosby, good friends with Von Miller, comes to the Pass Rush Summit every year to also give advice to the younger Bills who will be going up against this team, which is kind of a cool dynamic. But you know, when it comes to this game, they're both just playing all out. What do you think, though? On the flip side, where can the Bills maybe expose these Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, I think the defense is questionable. Even though they have some the pass rush ability, the defense they're it's questionable against the run. I don't think Denver really tested them well enough against the run. They were really bad against the run last year. So the Bills should do some work there. Their defensive secondary, this is not the Jets' defensive secondary. They signed Marcus Peters, who's a man coverage corner. The Bills love to attack man coverage. Their other cornerback's a rookie, Jacorian Bennett. Their slot corner is a lower round guy, Nate Hobbs. That's a question mark. The offensive line isn't, a top 10 offensive line. So, the Bills have plenty of matchup advantages in this game.
Yeah, so that's our home opener this Sunday. We'll have all your coverage leading up to that from the game as well on buffalonews.com. And then here on this podcast, make sure you're checking back each week throughout the season and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.
Treat your team to the most flavorful pizza on game day at Picasso's Pizza. 4 great Western New York locations: Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's. We are Buffalo's Pizza since 1980. Order online today at picassospizza.net.